I don't like that it starts from 6. That makes
it's weird, eh?
Like 10.
Me too, I don't like it.
Get your fucking shit together, Riverside.
Or 3, yeah.
I'm with you, man. It's like how I like being age 10 or the 5. Like I like being 20, 25, 30, 35. But like being 36, like what's that about?
Yeah. Are you also 36? I just turned 36.
I'm not 36, but I will be
I see.
soon, and I won't enjoy it. I'm 32, which is also a little upsetting. Not as upsetting as 33. 34 is fun. 36 is not. 37 is not. 40 is
You don't
good.
like multiples of 3, I noticed.
I think not.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's not a clean number. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
You just turned 36? Was it your birthday recently?
Yeah, like a month ago.
April,
yeah.
the what?
24th.
Sick. I'm April 17th. So you're an Aries. No, you're a Taurus.
I'm just on the other end of the border between Aries
You're
and Taurus.
a cusper.
I'm a cusper, yeah. A Taurus cusp.
But you guys are in the stand-up community, so I'm sure you've had every female comic about your sign. I'm not gonna put you through this another time.
Yeah.
That being said, Ryan.
I'm a skeptic. No.
Ooh.
No, I'm a Cancer.
Oh, interesting.
To all of those around me, but also I like crabs.
You like crabs,
right? Isn't Cancer a crab? Right? That's right.
Crab. So that would mean that would be the equivalent of you liking your own kind, I guess. I like crabs.
I didn't even know what it was until like maybe a year or 2 ago when somebody asked me and they were like, "Oh, what's your sign?" I'm like, "Oh, is this like a requisite piece of knowledge I'm supposed to just have in my back pocket?"
See, everyone is it like 70% of people are skeptics about astrology.
Oh. Sorry, I think we have been live.
How we doing?
Well, okay, just
okay, good.
be prepared for that possibility.
That's fine. Nothing tragic happened.
In fact, things might have been working, and I don't know how they do. So we are on YouTube. That's a start.
Sweet.
Okay,
Nice.
great.
That's good enough.
It's like astrology. Sometimes things are just working and you don't even know why it works.
Yes.
Why it all lines up.
I'm going to try to get this going on the other ones, but you guys can start.
Earlier. Is my gain level okay? My audio?
I'm not hearing
You are a little you're a little quiet.
I can make it louder. How's that? Is that
I think that's better. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I realized I forgot to ask that because I forgot my boom. I had to like pack everything last minute to like find Wi-Fi refuge, and I forgot the boom arm, so the mic isn't quite as close to my face as I would otherwise like.
To find higher ground.
Well, you're good.
Sweet.
You guys can jump into it. So sorry for the delay,
no
but
worries,
we
Michael.
are live in some places, and I'll be figuring out the rest as we go. So have fun, you guys.
Great.
Sweet.
Thank you. Bye. Welcome, everybody, to Shticks and Giggles officially. We had a soft launch. This is our hard launch into the actual podcast. I am Laura Lebo. I'm your host. These are my guests, Ryan Zeitz and Dan Rosen. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here.
Howdy.
Thank you for having me.
Howdy.
Yeah.
We were, just before we were actually recording this whole time, we were discussing astrology. And I just wanted to say that my theory on astrology is that everyone is a skeptic, but also everyone in the world has a small bit of narcissism inside of them. And secretly, every skeptic is like, it's bullshit. But then when you ask them, they're so fucking excited to be like, I'm a Leo. I don't even know what that means. I guess I'm like a king or whatever. You know what I mean? But Ryan, I believe you that what your sign was up until recently. That is such a Cancer thing. to not know that sign.
You've just outed me as a Cancer to the entire Canadian Jewish news
Oh,
podcast
so sorry.
listenership.
You're right. That's your choice to make when you come forward about that.
Yeah.
I actually love Cancers. Just so you like a water sign, they're very emotional. They have a lot of feelings. And so far, I'm getting that from you. You seem like a crier. You a crier?
It definitely doesn't help that I put in eye drops recently. I have chronic dry eye. I just saw my doctor, and he's like, "You gotta put these in like 5 times a day." So that's definitely not helping the cause.
Oh my
You've
god!
got like resting cry
dry...
face.
A resting cry face. Wow, chronic dry eye. That's a nice Jewish ailment to have. Good for you. That takes us nicely into our subject. We're going to talk about chronic illness and comedy. First, my question is, so how long have you guys both been at comedy? Dan, when did you start stand-up?
I started probably around, I mean, I really started, I'd say about 5 years ago. There were like a
Okay.
little bits where like, I do like 1 or 2 open mics at like 1 in the morning and then be like, no, I don't want to do it. And then I stop for a bit and then I start again. But about like 5 years, I'd say I've really been
Consistently
trying.
for 5.
Yeah.
Man.
I took a class at Second City in the summer of 2019, and kind of just,
Nice.
I got in like a couple of months, and then the pandemic's like, actually, no, you're not meant to do this. And it's been nice getting back and starting to do it again.
Did you do Zoom shows over the pandemic?
Oh, so many.
You did?
So many. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Because, those early years when you are hitting all the open mics and stuff are like some of the best years. So I'm glad to hear you got some version of that, even just over Zoom. But the reason I ask is because, it's about how much your chronic illnesses factor into your material. And if so, like if it does, how long it took you to start talking about it on stage, if at all? So Dan, do you talk about chronic illness in your material?
I do a lot of like Crohn's disease material. It started
Okay.
off when I first tried stand up. I was like with a bunch of friends, we were workshopping, and they all said that, ew, gross, like don't talk about that. Other friends of mine who are I mean, almost none of those people are doing stand up anymore, anyways. But then I had a story about having an enema that went wrong, and getting ready for like bowel surgery. And the host, who is of the show that night, who is Hisham Kaladi, said like, "Oh, that's a good story. You
Oh,
like a type 5 or whatever on Crohn's disease. And then you'll be able to, like, that'll really help.
And so then I started doing more of that. I ended up doing a one-man show called Game of Crohn's. Now that's more like storytelling, so it's not straight comedy, but it's mostly comedy. And then so it comes up. I feel like it comes up a lot. I usually do at least a couple chronic illness jokes every set.
okay. And so you started from you were ready to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, I think, what inspired me to do comedy. When I first had my first surgery, after my first surgery when I was in high school, uh, what was it? McSweeney's.net had this, like, you could do these open letters to people or entities who are unlikely to respond. And so I submitted an open letter to my removed bowel obstruction. It didn't get picked up, but that was like the first time where I was like, you know what? I think there's some funny stuff about this. Like it's a fart and
Yeah.
poop disease, so it is like painful, but also objectively funny in my opinion.
Thank you so much for acknowledging that farts are funny. I feel like as a society, we so rarely discuss that, and I really do believe that they are very funny.
Yeah,
So respect to you.
thank
So
you.
that's what
I
pushed you
agree.
into.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what pushed you into doing stand up. And does it help you process? Does doing stand up help you process with?
I think so. Yeah. It kind of
Yeah.
like yeah. I feel like it takes away the like severity of it in a way, like
Yeah.
because it's like it kind of takes away its power over you, and like it. And now, like if something happens, I'll be like, I bet I can get like a $20 bid out of this, or like, whatever, like you can get something, yeah, like good out of it, or it just always like helps keep things in perspective, so it's not as like sort of pushing you down. One comment that I've gotten from feedback from people who've seen Game of Thrones, for example, is that they liked that it wasn't a heavy show, that it wasn't just sort of like, oh, my crones, and doing an interpretive dance about how horrible I felt, just being like, oh, like, yeah, that joke about you shitting yourself walking home with a friend, like that was really funny and also very relatable.
Really quick side note, I just had like a flashback. I did a show, I don't even know, like 7 years ago or something. And it was like a piece, okay, you had to pick like a piece of art or like something, and then you had to do stand-up / like an interpretation of it. Anyway, all I remember is I took a picture of this guy's haircut in my computer science. I was taking like a coding class, and this guy had a very interesting haircut, and I took a picture of it and I put it on a projector, and then I did an interpretive dance of what his haircut looked like. And like I fully repressed that memory until this very moment when you said interpretive dance. Anyways, just for posterity, I wanted to remember that I did that. Okay, Ryan, what about you? Do you talk about chronic illness on stage?
I actually almost exclusively talk about my chronic dry eyes. No. No. So actually, recently, like I've been very, my chronic illness is mental illness. I've bipolar disorder, and I'm very, very outspoken about that, and it factors into a lot of the material that I talk about. I've actually even started like a fundraiser show for CAMH to raise money for the CAMH Foundation, where everybody talks about our various challenges with mental health and addiction, and I'm really trying to get that off the ground.
So it's a part of your act. Part of your act.
Yeah, okay. Very, very major part of my act. It wasn't at the beginning. Comedy was like I only started doing comedy because I was like in the throes of like I think my third like major massive bipolar depressive episode of my life in the winter of 2018, and it lasted about like 4 or 5 months, and I think around that time there was a Netflix special that came on TV on Netflix called Comedians of the World, and I saw another Canadian comics Ivan Decker's special on there, and it was just amazing, and that was like probably the first time that I smiled or laughed or did anything to kind of express joy in like 4 months. And my dad kind of recognized that, and he's like, why don't we take a class at Second City? That could be fun. And that was like the first thing that kind of got me back into the world in 2019. Wow.
So had you not considered doing stand-up prior to that?
It's something that my dad and I had discussed like in passing over many years. Back like 30 years ago, he did some of like the open mic scenes. He's like your typical dad who thinks he's a comedian. I think he did do like one corporate show for, and I'm gonna blank on it. It was like the Transit Authority in Brampton or something, like 30 years ago. But
we all want that gig.
Yeah, you gotta get that Transit Authority gig.
No way. I was wondering about it.
Yeah, on the merits of his Marceau impression.
That is so dad. That the dad part of my heart, the warmth. But so somebody who was always thinking about doing stand up, maybe, and then like going back and forth on whether you're gonna do it. Like your last bout of chronic illness is what really pushed you into it.
Yeah. Like comedy was never really like, I was always a typical funny kid in school or whatever, but like I was a whitewater rafting guide before I took a comedy class, so like, it was a complete left turn.
That is so incredible though. Like, I mean, I think so. The reason I ask about whether you guys talk about your chronic illness on stage is because I feel like it's an extremely vulnerable subject, especially if you are in an acute flare-up of your particular illness. it's very hard sometimes to gain like some perspective on it, or to it, and you're just sort of bogged down in it. So the fact that you guys both really early on started talking about it is, first of all, impressive, and also makes me feel like it's a large coping mechanism for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a large coping mechanism. Is it the only one, or
A
is
crutch?
two of others?
A crutch, perhaps?
A crutch? Well, you know, that's always the thing, right? Like, how much talking about incredibly personal stuff on stage is funny and good for the audience and enjoyable for the audience and truly helps people watching, and then how much of it is therapy for you, right? Like, there's really a fine ass line that you have to draw. You have to be very nimble to figure out that line. I certainly haven't personally figured it out. Do you guys feel like you have?
Not fully personally. I was watching like Taylor Tomlinson's latest special Look at You, where she talks about her mental illness, and there I was like, wow, that was really good. And I've seen some Toronto comics who have really great bits about yeah, so because like at the end of the day, like you're supposed to like the job is for the most part entertaining drunks in a dark basement. So like it's how much like gauging the room, also if people are like having a nice dinner during the show, how much do they want to hear about my diarrhea, and how much do I maybe need to like pivot to other jokes as well.
They want to hear about your
and keep it,
diarrhea
like,
too badly. You don't want to give them that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, otherwise it's
yeah.
desperate. Yeah.
It's embarrassing for them.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a really, really fine line to try and figure out, because, like, I think something that I've struggled with is figuring out how to take something that's, like, really, really sad and turn it into something funny. Like, I don't know, like, so I'm very, very big on content warnings and stuff like that. I put content warnings before my shows where I'm going to talk about mental illness. I put content warnings. I do a content warning before I dive into the depressive material, and I'll give a little content warning here to just kind of overlap what I'm about to talk about. Okay, where, like,
and I'm gonna give
if you're
warning on your content warning, so that if people don't want spoilers, content warning, because then they're gonna know what we're gonna talk about. Right. So spoiler alert. There's a content. Okay. Ryan, you have the floor.
For sure, yeah. So, you spoiled my content warning. It's like Doctor Strange, no. But no, yeah, so I mean, quick content warning, like, I do talk a lot about depression, about medication, electroshock therapy, suicidal ideation and stuff like that. And I think it's really difficult to kind of toe that line and be like, hey, if I'm talking about how I was contemplating hanging myself, well, where's the funny in that? And I think, because at the end of the day, our job is to be funny. That's like the number one goal. Like, it has to be funnier than it is sad, but it is kind of sad. And so I think, especially that kind of material I put at the end, because, like, you have to build up so much rapport. You can't just walk on stage and be like, hey, you don't know me. Here's how, here's the intricacies of trying to hang yourself in a basement apartment. What? I touched the ceiling standing up. I don't want to do all of my material here. I'm not going to do that. But so I mean, there is some funny stuff, and I think ultimately, if you're able to joke about something that is so dark, I think that means that at least, like, some small level of healing has occurred, which I think is super important.
100%. I mean, things about when you first start stand-up, you're generally doing between 5 to 10, maybe 10 if you're lucky, or maybe that was just my experience, but when I first started, it was short sets, right? And so I never felt like I had enough time to with the audience as a funny person before I launched into talking about addiction or mental. And so I avoided that subject for many, many years. And then as I started to get more time on stage, it became like, if you guys want to get into some CBT, like, I was never, because I had never tested it, like tested the behavior of trying that on stage, I became even more fearful of the idea of talking about it on stage, and so then I didn't do it, which reinforced the thought that I couldn't do it. And it's still an extremely challenging subject, because I don't feel like I got funny off of that material, if that makes sense.
Kind of. I didn't quite comprehend the last part.
Yeah, like
that
basically
you get
that
funny off of it.
Like that my comedic identity is separate from it, and if I bring it into if I bring it on stage, I'm gonna not succeed, or like I know what works on stage, and so far it's not been that. I'll allude, but I think talking about it like the way you guys talk about it on stage, to me, is extremely it's impressive, but it also is terrifying to me. I think it bodes well for you pretty quickly. Like I think that's pretty crucial to do, and I think you also probably need a little distance from it as well. Like I know with chronic illness you only get so much distance, but I think maybe even just being like a certain age too, for long enough that you've done enough processing.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
I think
definitely... Oh.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, the jokes that I've done, like, I mean, a lot of stuff that I talk about is like when I've been fortunate that the last few years, knock on wood, has been mostly in remission. But so like a lot of it has been stuff that's happened long enough ago to be like, all right, cool. Like I've been able to like figure out, like process, and also like figure out what about the situation that was funny. But yeah, I think it's like it does sometimes. Like I usually, when something happens, and like even like recently something happened, and so like I wrote down my notes or whatever about it, and then I still like waited a little time before I tried it out at a mic, instead of just like going right to the micro, like, being like, oh boy, like this horrible thing happened to me. I'm gonna find the first open mic that I can like talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like I guess 5 years ago. Okay, wait. Content warning. Okay, spoiler warning. Content warning. Miscarriages, illness, hospital stays. Family, just a good time all around. I had a miscarriage, but it was an ectopic pregnancy, and so I was in the hospital for like close to a month, and I needed all these blood transfusions and meds and da. And the whole time I was in the hospital, I was writing. I wasn't writing them down, but I was synthesizing and generating jokes in my head, and then like I was let out for 4 days. It was supposed to be forever, but it ended up being 4 days. I went to a mic, was out, and so it was like the exact opposite of what I had done with mental illness, which was avoided it like the plague. I was like, let's just go, let's just like get right into it, and it wasn't funny. Like I thought it was funny, and it would get a few laughs, but generally people were bummed out about it, and I started to get resentful of them for being. Even though I had not figured out how to adeptly like talk about it on stage. I'm wondering if that you've ever had, where you like you resent the audience for having like too much sympathy for you, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like,
you're ableist. I definitely related to that point, and the point you made earlier where you were like, yeah, it's terrifying to talk about this stuff, because like if I'm making jokes and opening up all this like very deeply personal information about myself and they don't laugh, it's like it's not just that you don't like my jokes, you don't like me as a person. Like if you don't laugh at my dick joke, cool, whatever. I wrote that on the subway on the way here. But this is who I am as a person, and you didn't like that, and that so it's definitely been difficult to try and remove yourself from that. Like not every audience is down for you know, the type of stuff that I was just talking about. I don't know if I should do it like every time I'm going to talk about it, do a content warning, or if there's a content warning off the top with a spoiler.
I think
I don't
if
know.
it's
I want to
with
make
the
sure
live
that
streams, it's kind of challenging, right? Because people can tune in and out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just give a quick content warning. We're really gonna get into some shit. Okay, mental illness, suicidal ideation. You know, just picture anything that you can.
Literal shit.
Poo, diarrhea. If you, it just like souls in our bowels, and if you can't handle it, just be aware that it's coming. Go on, Ryan.
But yeah, so it's like one of those things, like, again, like if I'm talking about like how I was in the hospital for almost 2 months and had like these, you know, really invasive electroshock. Well, now they called it ECT, it's electroconvulsive therapy. Yeah. And that's what people know as shock therapy or electroshock therapy. Yeah. I gotta stop using, I try and always use like more of the colloquial language rather than the actual language. I gotta start doing that and then kind of explaining what it is. Because yeah, it's ECT. It's actually a wildly humane thing too. Yeah. Everybody has so many misconceptions about it. I think that's part of what I'm trying to do with some of this material too, is to educate in a way, because there's so many misconceptions about what bipolar disorder is. I feel like anytime I've seen bipolar disorder portrayed in the media, in like in movies or TV shows, it's always like some evil, crazy like villain type character, or somebody who's just completely unhinged and does tons of stuff, and it's like, yeah, like, you know, I mean, psychosis, you can definitely experience some psychosis if you're in a particularly severe manic episode, but like, at least for me, like, I have bipolar 2, and that's like much more characterized by depression. Like, I'll just go like 4 months without doing anything. It's like, where's that? I want to see that on TV.
That's compelling stuff. No action at all. No, yeah. I feel like, you know, like with all humans, every person is has many good qualities and is extremely flawed, and certainly no stranger every mental illness in the DSM. I think every member of my family represents like one illness, but you know, there are challenging, dark elements of those illnesses, and that sometimes doesn't make everyone who has those illnesses the most likable person in the world when they're in an acute phase of that illness. But the point is that if there was more media from person perspective of people with those illnesses, then you can cover without it just being like this one note shitty, evil, scary character. You can incorporate elements that are dark or sometimes frightening but it's included in like a picture of a full person. And I do think there's a lot of talk these days about like you know, representation and like you know, undoing the chronic illness and mental illness and whatever. And it's like, sometimes I think that we've come so far but there's really only talk. Like, there's a lot of talk and very little act. You know what I mean? Like, I still see horrible representations of like all illness, physical or mental, chronic or otherwise, on television. You're like, there's no world where anyone with this diagnosis is in the room writing this, you know?
Yeah. I for Crohn's, because Crohn's I don't think is like, it's not like a fatal thing, but it can really, I mean, some people have like really bad and it really messes up their lives. And like, I've had it more just like intermittently, like sort of messing up my life temporarily here and there. But it's funny because I've seen both sides where sometimes it basically gets compared to IBS, also a condition that's not fun, but like a lot more minor by comparison in media. Or then I remember seeing like The Night Before, which is with like Seth Rogen, Anthony Mackie, and some others. And Anthony Mackie's character is doing something. He's like, oh, I'm going to do this just for like a Make-A-Wish Foundation for some kids with Crohn's disease. Like, I was like, well, it's not like a like sort of like terminal illness either, kind of thing. So it's just kind of funny where like it seemed like they were like, oh yeah, like what's some like illness that we've heard of that we can just like plug into the script or whatever. And so that's also why I was like, no one else is saying it. Like, even because even there'll be like comedians or people in the public eye who I know have Crohn's, but like Pete Davidson has Crohn's, but he hasn't done jokes about having Crohn's, and so I was like, oh, like maybe then, yeah, like I'll put it in kind of thing. To like, I guess, just to like sort of have it more accurate representation, or just have it more like, yeah, discussed a bit more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went to. Do you guys know the comic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went to a Mae Martin show last night, playing at the Danforth, and first of all, truly hilarious. I laughed so hard. It's quite rare that I can like really laugh at a stand-up comedy show these days. I don't know why, but also their material is extremely compelling. Like a lot of stuff about I wouldn't even say necessarily explicitly mental illness, but just like the condition of humanity. And my sister and I went together, and my sister I think was like slightly ambivalent. She was excited, but like, not that excited to go. And then when she left, she was like on a high, and it was incredible to see. Like, I guess I forgot the power. Oh, this is so pretentious, but the power of stand-up comedy. Like, it's really because I'm used to just being in dank basements and doing like sometimes shitty shows where no one even has enough time to like really get into it. But man, can it just like dramatic course of your night and then your week and then your month, like to feel seen and represented and heard, like there is massive importance to that. And it seems to me, do you guys, not necessarily that entire weight on your shoulders, but some weight on your shoulders, like that to people that are going through the same thing that you're going through?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, especially because I'm trying to build a platform out for CAMH. Like that's literally the hospital that saved my life, and I'm building this entire platform around it to be like, hey, come to this. Like I think even the way I describe it in the copy of the show is like comedians sharing hilarious and inspiring stories of their challenges with mental health and addiction. And I kind of want to set that standard right off the top, where it's like, hey, this is what we're going to talk about, and like come and we're gonna have some laughs, we're gonna have some tears, we're gonna have a whole bunch of everything. At the end of it, everybody's gonna come out of it better. Like there was a guy, one of the comics was doing crowd work last month in April, and somebody in the audience self-identified as having bipolar disorder during that crowd work. And then they came up to me after the show, and we had such a lovely conversation because he had just recently been diagnosed, and we were talking medications, and we were talking this, and I mean that's really what peer support is, because that's what I do for work too. I'm a mental health peer support worker, and
cool.
And so I mean that's the fundamentals of that, is like here's a whole bunch of people that kind of have similar lived experience, and we kind of all get in a room together and we talk about it. And kind of, there's no advice giving. It's just like all talking about from my first person POV. And if any of that is helpful, great. Take as much of it as you want. If none of it's helpful, that's okay too. And also just not like, don't talk about things that you don't know about either. I think it's really important. Like, it's really important. Like I'm not going to go up there and make jokes about schizophrenia because I don't have schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I don't experience that. I think that, and that's a standard that I like to set as well for people who are on that show, because it's like talk from your own POV, because that's what the show's all about. I think it's really cool and empowering to have those conversations with people after the show. I like talking with people after the shows more than I like doing the show sometimes.
Yeah. Relate to that, but good for you. That's great. I mean, if you're having like really, that's amazing. That's wonderful. Generally, the conversations I have are like, I generally don't find women funny, but I liked you.
Oh yeah.
That's such a tired take. I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. That's like literally the worst.
It's very funny. Mostly funny because I feel like I'm like rehearsing a play when that happens, where it's like each person thinks that they are uniquely saying that, like that they've generated that as a unique human viewpoint, and then I have to. I mean, it's like, oh, I've rehearsed this thousands of times. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're just a different actor in this part. Tangent. What I was gonna ask you guys is, do you remember? okay, I'm not gonna project here, but I wondered if like when you were initially what some of the feelings and emotions were around that. Like for me, loneliness and a feeling of like isolation and loneliness were very when I first realized I was an addict. I am curious what kinds of feelings you guys went through when you were initially diagnosed.
Well, for me, I was 11, so it was like a bit, I was almost, I think, a bit young to like fully process and not understand. I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, oh, phew, my dad said it's not fatal.
Yeah.
But then I think a big part, yeah, like was because like 25 years ago, like no one talked about bowel disease. And I know it's like, again, sometimes I feel silly saying that because like it's like I find like stuff like what Ryan's talking about is more almost urgent or like the stakes are higher in a way. But it is one of those things where yeah, like, because if I was like constantly going to the washroom or whatever, like I remember once I had to like take a dump twice in one class, and the teacher was like, "You already went to the washroom." And then a friend of mine, thankfully, at that point, I had a friend who understood. This was like grade 8, so I was like 13, and he went out and like whispered in the teacher's ear, and then she was like, "Dan, you may go to the washroom," like kind of thing.
Aww.
Um, and then at the same time, also being the little like shit disturber I was, sometimes then using that to my advantage and also being like, oh, Tommy hurt, I better go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
those things at first where I was like, sort of like, no one, like, yeah, like, sort of, it was like, oh, like, Dan, he's got that thing that's wrong with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Loneliness and isolation are in the early stages of any chronic illness. I think like pretty universally a major, which is why talking about it on stage, like it makes a huge difference. It really does. Sometimes I don't know, you forget, or I'll speak for myself. I've been doing it for long enough now that sometimes what I'm talking about on stage feels quite rote. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm
Mm.
just like, yeah, this joke, this joke, this joke, and then and like either like a joke or relate to a joke or say like it meant a lot to me, and you clue back in that that you're saying words, those words. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's true to talk about this stuff on stage. I also am curious about uh, okay, so there's a big like hustle culture to stand
Mm.
up, right? Like there's a lot of maybe it's less so now, but I think it, especially when you're starting and you're doing open mics, like that if you are not pushing your body and your mind to the limit every single night, that you don't get to be included in the way that you're supposed to. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to be out Monday to Friday until like, one, fuck up your entire sleep schedule, even though it's like crucial to some people's ability to truly survive the day. You know what I mean? And I imagine with chronic illness, those two things don't particularly. Is that something you guys have experienced? Like hearing like this idea that you need to hustle first of all, and how has that been with your particular chronic illnesses?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I mean, that's literally all you hear when you first start. It's like, oh, you gotta grind, grind, grind. Go to 5 mics a night. Oh, well,
Mm.
I'm starting at, now there's no mic there, but I'm starting at the Ossington, then we're going to Laughter Luau, and then we're going to Yuck's
Yeah,
Amateur Night, and bouncing all over. And if you're not doing all of that whole circuit in a night, you're not trying hard enough, and you don't deserve booked spots or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I think
Yeah.
and I definitely fell into that kind of self-destructive pattern early on because I literally was just diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was starting to do comedy. Like it's all
hmm,
still very new to me. Like I was only diagnosed in March of 2019. Like
Mm.
lots of problems before that like could have probably
yeah,
very easily been diagnosed years and years earlier, but the formal diagnosis came in March of 2019, and going out and then being a brand new comic, then going to all these different mics, like it was not good for me. And I've since learned and done a lot of, conferred with my psychiatrist, and and done a lot of research where like sleep is literally the most important
Yeah.
thing for mood disorders, where like that's like my number one indicators. Like, ooh, I'm like about to spiral. I only slept 4 hours last night, and I have tons of energy, and I'm talking as fast as Eminem. Maybe a hypomanic episode is on its way. And
Yeah.
so
Mm.
now, I think being able to set that boundary, like I've learned a lot more about myself having this time during the pandemic, and going through the hospitalization, and like, really taking time in my recovery journey to be able to feel comfortable advocating for myself and being like now, even like sometimes when I do a booked spot and they're like, oh, the show starts at 10, I'm like, I need to go on early and I need to leave by 11 because I still have to
Yeah.
drive
Yeah.
back to Richmond Hill and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will be unwell. And everybody's, at least the people that I've worked with, all seem, everybody's been really accommodating and really understanding. And I think
Oh,
it's,
that's
yeah, just
nice.
really important to advocate for yourself too.
It's important.
Yeah, I think
A massive skill. Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say I think people are getting better at that because I remember sometimes people being like, oh, like if someone was like, oh, I can't make it, I'm sick, and they're like, oh, like you're like staying home because you're sick or whatever, like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like, oh, like poor baby has to take care of themselves so that they're in like good health condition, and I like there was even I remember during yeah, like when shows came back after COVID, and I had to tell a guy like, oh, I can't make it to the show tonight, I'm sick, and then he's like, as long as you don't have COVID, I don't mind if you show up at the show. I'm like, no, this is like for me less than like just like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to spread COVID. I don't have COVID. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm not well and I need to like, yeah, take care of myself. And I think people for the most part are getting better. And it is weird because that guy was just doing out of a supportive position. He wanted me to be on the show. Um, but it is one of those things where also like hustling and doing like what Ryan said, like going from show to show to show. I'm like, well, I need to eat between that, and I need to eat
Yeah.
for the most part food that's not at the venues that
Hmm.
I'm performing at, because usually it's like yeah, like burgers, fries, whatever, like greasy, like deep fried chicken fingers, like just like stuff that's the worst. And even like if they have their like healthy menu might just be like a salad, and even salad for me, raw vegetables are no go. So like
Yeah.
sometimes I have to like make sure I've got my own little like cooked snack, or find that like one secret item on the menu that won't screw me up tomorrow kind of thing. So it is, and so yeah, like I find I can't do, especially with a day job and also like a wife and a child, and uh, who like I want to make sure I balance all those things. So I can't just like do every single night all the time, and like or and do the like Ryan said, like I'll have to ask like as well, like, hey, can I be on earlier on this night, and that sort of thing.
I'm very pleased and heartwarmed to hear that you guys honestly had a good reception to that, and that people have been like accommodating and kind. I think that's probably the case. Majority of people are understanding. The odd person here or there who isn't can really make an impact. Feel quite
Mm.
shitty and excluded. And I think some of what I've experienced in the community is basically an attitude of like, well, none of us like to miss sleep or be out late or eat
Yeah.
crappy food, but it's like it's two things. One is if you are like spiraling after your sleep schedule, look into that. Like if you too
Yeah.
are having a really hard time with this, you might want to look into that. If you're not, maybe you could be like a little compassionate that some people truly particularly struggle. Just like no one likes it. It's like no, it's crucial. And that thing I've noticed sometimes is like an attitude of like, well, it's just the human
Oh.
condition. It's what you do. It's like no, it's not the same thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I've seen that a lot, and even like also sometimes work in like film and TV, and you'll see people being like, oh yeah, like you gotta just like go from contract to contract, gig to gig, constantly doing stuff, and now people are starting to do, like, if I pick up a contract working in TV production, and I'll be like, look, this is my situation. I'll get your work done. I'll just be in the bathroom a lot more than the other people who work in our department. And, I'll also want to get home in time to, see my baby so that he knows I still exist and, like, stuff like that. To try and balance all that. So it is, I mean, it is tough in the extra level, but starting to, like, advocate a bit more for yourself. And I think because unfortunately, like, I feel like it takes someone celebrity or someone big, like, so having like Taylor Tomlinson talk about the stuff that she talks about, Mike Birbiglia, or whoever else, then that kind of gets people being like, oh, all right, well then maybe, this is something that we should consider.
Yeah, this may, but I think it's so unfortunate because I'll talk about mental illness because. It's been 60 years of comics having illness, like dying from it and talking about it on stage, and it's been it's a plight among stand-up comics in particular, and I think it's like this cycle over and over where people get through the industry in spite of their illness and in spite of people's attitude about their illness, and they push and push and push, and then they succeed and get to a level they can talk about it, and then everybody's like, wow, I love hearing about that material of theirs on stage, it's so impressive. But a good majority of those people would have been frustrated with them for like leaving a show, a full traumatic trauma breakdown in the middle of a show, whatever it is. Cycles over and over again, and it would be nice if that support started at a much lower level, to like get much worse before they can succeed or just feel constantly isolated. I do think Toronto is a particularly good city for that. Like, should compare, but I think Toronto might be particularly supportive.
I think we've all become so much more compassionate, a little bit more understanding since the pandemic too, because like, I mean, people who had never once, people who would be considered as neurotypical, who had never experienced any sort of challenges with mental illness or otherwise, were thrust into this situation of isolation and experienced symptoms of depression and isolation and anxiety and all of these different things. And I think it's made us all a little bit more compassionate. I think going back to what you said earlier, Laura, like there's a lot of talk, there's been even more conversation, still probably not a whole lot of action, which is unfortunate. If anything, it's kind of resulted in less action because now there's more people demanding services with an already limited budget. At least that's been my experience in trying to access services over the last couple of years, where like it literally took me being in the hospital, medicated and getting ECT treatments for 2 months to be able to access like a community funded CBT program, which is crazy. That's a horrible word to say, which is unfortunate. Trying to police my language a little bit more. I mean, I do work in mental health. That's my bad.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, no, that's all. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm just agreeing.
No. So I'm never trying to interrupt. I would much prefer you say something. Please, Dan. What were you gonna say?
Yeah. Disagreeing with Ryan. And actually, I wanted to bring things just quickly back because having seen both of you perform about I've seen, Laura, your bit about your ectopic pregnancy or whatever. And when I saw it, it was hilarious. You did a really great.
Thank you.
And Ryan.
Like your stuff, like when you hit that. Like seeing how like when you've hit that note of making that really dark thing or difficult to talk about thing, but you make it in a way that is really funny and also not like belittling the situation and acknowledging it, but it's also like it's got like lots of punchlines and also really addresses the emotional. Like that is where you get that high that you were talking about coming back from the Mae Martin show. Where then it's like, like you just feel seen someone, yeah, articulate something like that. Anyhow, so I wanted to mention that as well, even though it was relevant about 15 minutes ago in the conversation.
Oh well, this ties nicely to chronic illness because I have ADD, so I talk blocks of conversation, and then it took me years to realize this, that people were always. I just wanted to go back to something, Laura, you said about 14 minutes ago. Always, and I'm like, oh, that's right. I just kept going, so no one had an in. But I also recently, I became quite. So but I was like, oh, you're being so ridiculous. Like that's, everyone's self-diagnosis. So I said to my sister, I was like, you're gonna think I'm being ridiculous and just like overanalyzing everything I do and overthinking and going on TikTok, but I think I might have ADD. And my sister I thought she was gonna be silly. She was like, oh yeah, no, yeah, obviously. I was like, oh, that's been glaringly obvious to you forever? I had no idea. I said, why, like, what makes you say that? And she meant this politely, but she was like, I just think some things are really hard for you and you think they're hard for everybody, but they're not. I was like, oh, like, I didn't, I was like, organizing yourself. I was like, oh, that's not like a incredibly difficult task for every person. Anyways, ADD perfectly on topic here. But I was also gonna ask, like, okay, so one of the reasons I was able to very, very quickly talk about my ectopic on stage was because I just felt like I was gonna be validated. Like I knew that people were gonna be like, that sounds like a real, right? Like I knew that people would feel that way. There's certain things I don't talk about on stage because I'm, well, yeah, but like just not validated, I guess, or not agree that it's challenging to go through, or if I talk about something on stage and the secret hope is that a bunch of people will be like, yes, but I'm scared that no one's gonna relate, and I'm curious if that's something that you guys can relate to.
I mean, for me,
and there are times where, because I think it's been war for me, where sometimes, yeah, sometimes it seems like no one's into hearing about it, or it's just like it isn't
something that, like, yeah, like sort of that they can relate to. And then other times, yeah, like I'll be in what I thought was just, yeah, like I'm like, all right, well, whatever, this is some dank bar show, dive bar, and then someone's like, oh yeah, I have Crohn's. Or once, like, I did.
Most of the people there had Crohn's or colitis
or some other bowel disease, and then there it was like, oh, like, there, like everyone was like, oh, this is the Crohn's comedian, and like he's saying like what we're all feeling and stuff like that, and then like for like half an hour, I'm like a celebrity. I'm like a celebrity because I'm like the only one who, yeah, it was like, I am your leader or whatever. But so it is, yeah. Sometimes it's like that side, and then sometimes it is like, and I've gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? If it doesn't hit home with anyone, that's fine, as long as if I can get a few chuckles out of it, and then if it does hit home, then that's even better, kind of thing. Yeah.
I guess my response to that question too would be like, I mean, again, I guess from a mental illness standpoint, like, people are aware of mental illness, people know about general, right? There's like some general knowledge out there about many of the things, and I think we are as a society starting to talk a lot more about it. I think we cover a lot of the surface area stuff, where it's like people are comfortable, like, oh, let's talk about depression. Oh, you mean you were in bed for a day and you didn't want to make dinner? You ate ramen? Oh, I'm depressed too. But like they don't want to talk about like hey, I Googled, content warning, we're going to talk about suicidal ideation here. Right? Like, oh, I spent 3 days Googling the least painful way of ending my life, and I have like 30 tabs open with different methods. Like, nobody wants to talk about that, and I think that's something that, I mean, I'm still, that's a particular thing that I've done that I'm still trying to find the funny in. Maybe it's something like oh, you know, you kind of get clickbaited. Sometimes you click on those things and it's like, oh, top 10 easy ways to end your life, and it's like it links you to like a self-help book, and you're like, get out of here with that shit. That's not what I wanted. But no, but like so I think it's really important to, yeah, it's kind of scary to talk about those bigger things that are a little bit deeper than the surface level of like, okay, are people going to relate to the intricacies of my suicidal ideation? Are people going to relate? Because I mean, like, I'm very, very vocal, and I'm thankful that I am, because like that's how I wound up getting to the hospital. I literally, I think the day before I went to the hospital, I turned over to my girlfriend in bed and was like, I want to say goodbye. Like, thank you so much. When you go to sleep, I'm gonna go do it. And she stayed up all night and like did not sleep and made sure I was okay. And then spoke with my mom, and we took me to CAMH the next day. But like some people don't, right? Not everybody talks about stuff that deeply, and I think by continuing to have those conversations and dive deeper, the more we talk about the more challenging things, the more comfortable people will be to talk about those things as well and identify with that. I always feel so like narcissistic when I talk about shit like that. I'm like, yeah, like, ugh.
No, it's
I'm a pioneer, but like.
Wait, first of all, I'm on a delay, so I apologize. But firstly, something there with the, like, you have a bunch of tabs open on your computer, and so your computer dies, and you get envious of the computer that, like, it was able to kill itself before you could kill yourself. Like, something there. But that is sort of what I mean about this fear of, like, a lot of people talk about the acute elements of all the things of, you know, depression, bipolar, addiction, anxiety, severe real anxiety disorder. They talk about all the like cute, and so sometimes you'll say, you know, they'll say to a crowd like, you know, any depressed people here, and the entire crowd cheers. But if you were to bring up like a true part of real depression, you're not big response. And so I think it's that's one of the things I struggle with, is like ready to just be like, to just say this part of myself that feels so vulnerable, and then just like have dead air. So I commend you both for talking about it on stage. My computer, we're on a delay, and we're almost at an hour, so I have to wrap up this truly compelling conversation that we're all having. So I just wanted to, before I go, is there any upcoming for you guys you want to promote? Any shows, any other podcasts, anything?
Ryan, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we're both so polite. These nice, polite Jewish boys. You go ahead. We've only been cutting each other off the whole.
Yeah. Ryan.
Yeah. So one, I run. I alluded to it many times. I run a mental health charity fundraiser show. It raises money for CAMH. It's called Mental Health, HELLTH, because I'm a sucker for a good pun. We're currently without a home right now. We had a scheduling issue with the venue, and I'm looking for a new accessible venue. I'm waiting to hear back from the CAMH Foundation if we can just start hosting it on site there, which would be amazing. And then I also just got greenlit to start teaching a stand-up 101 for mental health class at the Collaborative Learning College at CAMH. And it's going to be kind of a peer support, comedy instruction kind of thing. We're going to go around. Because, like, I mean, and I've been dealing with so much imposter syndrome about this. I'm like, who the hell am I to be teaching this class? But, like, you know, if you take, like, am I the best comedian? No. Am I the most knowledgeable person in mental illness? No. But am I a working peer support worker and working in mental health and also have a base knowledge of comedy? How many people like that exist? So, yeah, I'm going to take a lot of flack for it in the community, I'm sure. But,
no.
Oh, you should see old T-Suck posts. That's a nod. That's just for us three. But
yeah,
but yeah, so that's hopefully going to be starting in.
Really, fuck every single one of them. Just for the record.
That's hopefully going to be starting in August, and it'll be open, like, anybody who self-identifies. There's no limits or restrictions. We're gonna start it off as like a pilot. Do it the one. I'm working with them. We're building out, making it all pretty with graphics and stuff. Hopefully it'll be in person because I know all the collaborative learning stuff is online purely right now. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I guess would this be a place to like plug like handles and shit to be like, hey, if you want to hear about this class, like whatever. So I guess for any and all shows that I'm running, including my mental health fundraiser show for CAMH and the other one-off things I do a monthly show in a brewery in Newmarket and other things like that. It's at Rye Guy Comedy Shows on Instagram and Facebook, and then just me and what I do is also just at Ryan Z or Ryan Z Comedy, at Ryan Z Comedy, for all fun updates on mental illness, comedy, and otherwise.
Beautiful plug. I want to talk to you after about this class you're doing, because I've been kind of developing something similar for a while for children, and I'm interested to hear about how you got into this. Yeah. Also, I want to talk to you about it. Dan.
So yeah, if you want to find me, I'll be in the bathroom. No, sorry. I've got a show the first Saturday of every month at Comedy Bar, 7 p.m. The next one will be June 4th. It's called Big Dumb Show. So it's a variety show. It's not just stand up and storytelling and stuff like that. Al Val will be headlining. She's really great. And I've started doing a monthly show that I do called World Class Comedy at MB, the place to be. It's the last Thursday of every month. It's this Filipino restaurant bar in North York, because I wanted a place that's, I guess, closer to my people where I live, instead of always having to drive downtown to do comedy. And if you want to find me on any of the social medias, TikTok and so on, it's at Dan the Guy Rosen, Guy, Dan the Guy Rosen. Yeah, that's where you can find me, and where all my memes about being a dad, Crohn's disease, Jewish stuff, all that stuff. A little bit of each, mix it all together.
Jewish stuff. That's most of what you'll find on my page
Jew
too.
Jokes today.
Yeah.
All 3 Jews. I mean, we talked about chronic illness and mental illness and bowel disease. I feel like those are all inherently Jewish subjects.
Very Jewish, yeah. There's there's a great...
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, there's a great Facebook group called Jew Book Posting, and it's just all Jewish people making jokes about their bowel problems.
That's beautiful. So that's what we... all right, listen. This is the worst because of the delay, but I think we're all on the same page here. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I apologize for the delay, but I'm so on the podcast. I so enjoyed chatting with you guys, and everyone listening, go check them out. Go check out other handles. Go follow Dan to the bathroom. Follow Ryan to the bathroom. Follow me to the bathroom. Let's all meet and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks a lot, Laura. This is great.
Thank you so much.